You're listening to the Cynic Radio Podcast. Now, your hosts, Igri and Cynic.
You are listening to episode 29 of the Cynic Radio Podcast, and I'm your host, Cynic. And joining me as always, the man the new movie How to Be a Latin Lover is based off of, my good friend, Igri. Our world travelers, Jules and Mr. Ryan George, are back in their assigned seats, and on this week's show, we're going to play the Game of Thrones, taking a little bit of a different approach than most shows, as we review, score, and tell you who came out on top for Season 1. We're also going to do a little bit of Really and What's Up, because we are the Cynic Radio Podcast. And if you found us, you already know a White Walker isn't a Caucasian dude without a ride. Miss out on that latest viral video? Didn't see the most recent trailer for the next movie coming out? In the dark about what the biggest song in America is? We've got you covered. Every week we scour the internet and look for the latest and greatest. This is What's Up.
What's up for me this week is the Netflix series Dear White People. This dramedy on Netflix is pretty good. It's about a predominantly white Ivy League college with a diverse group of students going through various forms of racial and other types of discrimination. It's a really good look at what's going on in the world today through some different lenses. Maybe it'll make you think, maybe it'll make you laugh. Either way, go check it out. Dear White People on Netflix. That's what's up.
What's up for me this week is Louis C.K.'s most recent Netflix stand-up special. It was released about 2 weeks ago and is one of his best specials, period. Louis C.K. is one of the best comedians alive and has been for a really long time. And I feel like his last couple of specials were maybe not quite up to par, with his previous work and even with the show. But this special was definitely a return to form for him and is just hysterical. So you can catch it on Netflix and definitely watch it. It's one of the funniest stand-up specials I've seen in a really, really long time. So again, What's Up for me is Louis C.K. on Netflix.
What's up for me this week, and I never thought I'd say it, but it's a show on the CMT network. Those that aren't familiar with the CMT network, well, that's the country music television channel. I didn't even know I had it, but I digress. It's the show Sun Records, based off the now world-famous Memphis recording company that has founded and recorded small little unheard of acts like Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis, to name a few. The show is set in 1952 Memphis, Tennessee, where a man named Sam Phillips opens a small recording studio, which struggled until a young delivery driver named Elvis Presley wandered in his doors to record a song for his mother's birthday, and the rest ends up being history. If you want to see where most of today's music was spawned, go back to the beginning with Sun Records and see for yourself. The 8-episode run can be found on demand and hopefully will be renewed for a second season. So for this week, Sun Records on CMT, your What's Up.
Hey guys, my What's Up this week is to Bill Maher, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren for speaking out against the pernicious precedent that the students of UC Berkeley seem to be setting by protesting and fighting against right-wing commentators from speaking on their campus. A few months ago, $100,000 worth of damage happened to the campus to prevent Milo Yiannopoulos from speaking. And this month, the threat of doing it all over again prevented Ann Coulter from speaking on the campus as well. No matter what side you fall on when it comes to your opinion of these outspoken conservatives, whether you find them to be trolls or the voice of their party, they have a right to speak under the First Amendment and quite honestly should be heard so anyone who wishes to support them can hear them. I appreciate these liberals taking the time out to make public statements against these protests because quite honestly, in my opinion, isn't this just a different form of hate speech by saying that people like Ann Coulter and Milo Yiannopoulos do not have a right to be heard? While ultimately this appearance was canceled for Coulter, it is important that politicians and liberals remain united in protecting the First Amendment, as this should always be a bipartisan issue. So to Bill, Bernie, and Elizabeth, you are What's Up.
Jules, since you were living it up last week, the Rangers go beyond the wall, and it's the rise of the White Walkers. What were your thoughts on the opening of the show?
I love this show right from jump. I came in the 4 seasons in. I was not aware of what the hype behind the show other than my sister, and I finally sat down with my husband one night and said, let's just give this a try. After watching the first episode, especially the ending on Bran being pushed out a window, you're not leaving the couch for the next 10 hours after that.
Yeah, they really did grab you at the end of that episode. There's no way you don't watch the second episode, much like Rick being stuck in the tank. You're not going anywhere. You've got to see what happens. So yeah, IG, the stag and the direwolf both pay the iron price. The Starks find 6 pups, and based off of what Grey Wind did for Robb during the battles and Summer saving Bran, how much of an impact have the direwolves had on the Stark family?
Oh, the direwolves. My lord, those fucking dogs are amazing. Those things, most of the time, if the wolves are doing something, they are actually better than the Starks themselves. They are more loyal, they are more trustworthy, and they make better decisions. It's almost as if they are people that are infallible. And maybe that's dogs in general. I mean, you got every dog in every movie. It's like you could do anything you want to a main character. Don't hurt the dog. And that ends up true in this series too.
It's definitely something that John Wick taught us. Don't ever
Yeah.
hurt the dog. Ryan, your thoughts on the direwolves?
I think they're great. I mean, I don't have much to add because I love dogs, and so having them kind of represented in the show so prominently is awesome, and that they do have a great connection to the Starks really adds to the show. And it does add, like, when they're killed, it feels like a part of the Starks is being killed, or a part of whomever they're connected to is being killed, and so they're definitely a huge part of the show for me.
I agree. I wish they would have spent a little CGI and shown one of the wolves in battle, though, especially the first battle with Rob. I mean, they didn't even spend any money on that. Between the battle between Robin and Jaime, they were just like, oh, battle's over. But I kind of wish we would have saw Grey Wind in action. Ryan, Jon Arryn dies, and we overhear hushed conversations and plotting from the Lannisters. Can we do anything at this point but blame them?
No, at this point we can't. And I was slightly skeptical, obviously, because it's like, okay, are they trying to make us think that they're the kind of catalyst of all this? But you can't help but trust them. I mean, there's the way they look, the way they talk. They're just not trustworthy. They're not a trustworthy group. So no, you can't help but blame them.
The Lannisters are always about the Lannisters, and a Lannister always pays his debts. And somehow they're collecting early, and that's how they're able to pay their debts, because they're taking out of pockets from House Arryn there.
They seem to be a black belt in scheming. That's for certain. Right off the bat, we don't get a pleasant hello out of them before they're already lobbing insults at the king and basically saying Jon Arryn got what he deserves. The king arrives at Winterfell, Jules, and Ned is offered the position of hand, and he accepts. But did the king's party seem awfully Lannister heavy to you?
I didn't think it seemed Lannister heavy to me necessarily. I just think that the king has to roll deep with an entourage because he's the king, and I think that it seemed appropriate for him traveling across the King's Road for whatever they might come across, that they would be fully, heavy with King's Guard.
And I'm not sure they're all Lannisters, really. Again, I think that it might just be coincidental that the Kingsguard uniform tends to lean toward Lannister colors.
Yeah, but we see Jaime, we see Tyrion, we don't see Stannis, and we don't see Renly.
Well, Tyrion is one of the Lannisters, so he's with Cersei, his sister, so he's not a member of the Guard. And Jaime is the head of the Kingsguard, so although he is a Lannister, he's given up any right to his position in the family to be in the Kingsguard, because it's kind of like, when you take the black, you're giving up rights to your family stuff, and now you're this. It's the same thing with the Kingsguard.
IG Daenerys marries Khal Drogo. Seeing your infinity for big strapping men, was the Khal the right choice for Dany?
Well, it's better to grab a big strapping man like Khal Drogo than it is like some hippie from Bonnaroo. So I think it's probably a better option. Yeah, he's got a horde of people. That's definitely going to make her stronger to begin with, and she's going to need that because the eventual plan for those Targaryens is to go take back the Iron Throne. So big plus for her, yes.
Yeah, I don't know what people's problem is with Bonnaroo, but I have heard that before. Ryan, Dany gets 3 dragon's eggs and a white stallion for her wedding gift, along with other parting presents. Did you think that the dragon eggs were going to come into play later in the story?
No, yeah, that says I hadn't read the books. I didn't know much of what to expect. And while I knew it was there, obviously from the opening there were some fantasy elements. I didn't really think much of the dragon eggs until there was. I know at some point they really started. There were much more hints towards them being something of importance, but initially I didn't really think they had much value to the story.
Julie, Kat and Ned get the Catcher in the Liza letter saying that Jon Arryn was murdered by the Lannisters and the king was in danger. If you were Ned, would you have done the whole thing differently?
Well, it's easy for me to say I would have, but I think that Ned did what his duty was, and I think he was looking out for his friend Robert. Obviously, they have a close friendship, and I think he did the honorable thing, and I think he didn't have much choice. I don't think he really could have not gone and been the hand. I don't really think the choice was there.
I don't know. Seeing how shit is going down there in King's Landing, about any other option is better for me at this point. I think I might have checked out.
Bran was the perfect excuse, too. It's like, oh, listen, my son's a cripple now. I've got things to do, and I've got to go return videotapes.
That is a good point. That is a really good point. You would have thought maybe Robert would have given him a reprieve after seeing that his son was, like, possibly paralyzed or more than likely going to end up dead. You would have thought he might have been like, hey, okay, maybe now's not a good time for you.
Well, he does have 2.5 other sons if you count Arya and Jon. I mean, I don't know. I think at this point he had to go. IG, Bran catches the twins, Jaime and Cersei, making love and tosses Bran out the window. The queen seemed to scream verbally at the Kingslayer to do something, but wasn't happy with the result. What do you think she wanted done? Or was it just kind of a case of buyer's remorse once the deed was done? Pun was definitely intended.
At that moment, I think, all right, well, if we don't move quickly, someone's going to find that we're up in this room. That might end badly. But I think the bigger buyer's remorse is that the kid didn't die. Kid don't die. Kid can still talk. Shit comes out. That's a bad thing for those two. And I'm really surprised that it really never came out. Like, Bran never really said anything about it in this season to anybody about what he saw there.
Yes, Cersei definitely reminds me of somebody that doesn't care about consequences unless the consequence is going to come back onto her, just like that, where like she wouldn't have cared if he died. She would have been fine that Jaime did what he did. But if he doesn't die, then it's like, there's where your buyer's remorse is.
Yeah, but Bran, he lives, but he's crippled and in a coma. But I found myself having a hard time connecting with the story or even caring. Did you suffer from the same thing?
Caring about which part?
About Bran. The whole Bran thing, the whole enchilada, the three-eyed raven, the Hodor. I had a hard time. That was the one part of the story that I could never follow throughout this far in the series.
Yeah, I'm hoping that takes a hard turn. I'm trying to stay focused a little bit on season 1 here. And season 1, he really didn't do much. Besides have Hodor carry him around and put him on a horse and do some other shit. He didn't do much, but...
I think Bran was the least interesting character until the most recent season. So I think they, based on a lot of what was going on around him, they were able to make him and his story interesting. And I think he obviously there's some value to his character and there's something important, so I think, I think we'll see over the next season, hopefully more to his character, but I was definitely more interested last season.
I'm gonna just jump in here and agree with you guys. I do think that Bran's story is ponderous. It's taken a long time to sort of flesh out and get to the point. Ig is right. This last season, it started to come back around, but for sure, I agree. This was my least. And whenever he was on screen, it was not exciting.
Again.
It becomes later in the series too with Sansa. It's like, oh, another Sansa. And when I was reading the books too, it's like, oh, another Sansa chapter.
Oh, really? I've always liked Sansa. I always like her storyline.
Not until the last season. Up until then, she was just a whipping boy. Just, all right, let's beat up on somebody. Sansa, get over here.
All right, Ryan. So we know every great sword has a name, and Jon gives Arya her needle. Is it safe to call needle a bastard sword? Huh. It's the scourge of fat boys everywhere. What's the appropriate age to give a deadly weapon to a child?
In this world, maybe 10 or 11. Normally, probably not for a while. But obviously, it was the right decision as she's needed and been able to take advantage of Needle. And I think again, like catalyst for her story was Ned seeing her, and what she felt about the sword and giving her the dancing lessons. And that's allowed her to develop into, the murderous badass that she's developed into.
Why can't a 7-year-old have a fucking bow and arrow and a sword and just fucking stab anything she feels like? Come on. Why not? That seems right, doesn't it? But yeah, that's a big player in this series, and Needle is definitely getting the job done.
An assassin attempts to kill Bran. Kat and then Summer both fight him off. Jules, what are your feelings on Kat after that scene? Also, are you pro or against pets sleeping in your bed?
Well, I only have one cat, so he doesn't ever come up on our bed. I don't know that if I had a small dog, I wouldn't mind that, but I don't want a big dog in my bed. But I do definitely have certain feelings about Kat. I'm not a big fan of hers. She's made some choices that I would not have done or agree with, but I think in this scene, she definitely showed she is one fierce mama bear not to be messed with. I mean, she's grabbing a knife with her hands without even thinking about it. So I do give her props for that scene. Generally after that, I shake my head at her though.
I do have 2 pets that sleep in my bed. So yes, Kat, I didn't get the hate for Kat, throughout the show. I think I realized kind of rewatching that she does make poor choices, and she's a large part of the reason why things are in such disarray. But I think she's doing what any mother would do. So I think you could tell that she cares about her family. She's loyal to her family. Obviously there are things like the way she treats Jon Snow, and again, a lot of her choices aren't great. But I thought that obviously she was going to do whatever she could to save her son, and so it shows that if nothing else, she is a great mother and a great parent.
Well, if you're going to have an animal that sleeps in your bed, I mean, a dire wolf that's willing to protect you at all costs is much better than our so-called attack cat that sleeps with Jewel. Because that cat is going to be like, oh, you want to kill her? Well, just put some tuna on the floor on your way out.
That's exactly true.
IG, we jump to the fight between Joffrey and Arya. Joffrey and Sansa are out on a wine crawl, and they come across Arya and a very slow-moving butcher's boy, and all hell breaks loose. In your opinion, is this the opening salvo in what is to become the little motherfucker that is Joffrey, even before he comes into power?
Oh, this little motherfucker. And talk about a bitch boy. I mean, do nothing for himself and gets beat up by a 7-year-old. Come on, man. And then goes whines, Daddy! They smacked me and did things, and there was a poor person, and I don't like poor people. So, yeah, he's a bitch. He's a little bitch.
Jules, what did you think of that scene?
Yeah, it showed that Joffrey is this, and he's super entitled, thinking he's stud man walking with his lady, and all of a sudden, he gets taken down by little Arya, and I think just watching him completely change his attitude, like, come on, I'm gonna, fight you with his sword, and when he was unarmed immediately, his whole demeanor completely changed. He is a bitch.
Yeah, he was a tough guy when it was sword versus stick, but once it wasn't sword versus stick anymore, there was a problem. Ryan, the Lannisters order Lady put to death. Bran wakes up. There seems to be a connection between the Stark children and the direwolves. Do you believe these stories where people move away and their pets find them hundreds of miles away?
I like to. I love believing any of those like weird animal, those animal kind of reunion stories. I think it's probably just chance outside of, it's mostly chance, unless there's a situation where an animal gets dropped off somewhere far, far away, or they get lost and then they kind of find their way back home. But I still think it's like 90% of the road is them just randomly walking wherever. And then like the last 10% is them maybe smelling something familiar and finding their way back.
Quite possibly. What do you think the connection between the direwolves and the Stark children are?
Well, there obviously is a real connection, between them. I guess the question is, was the connection there before they found them, or was it like kind of destiny? Like were they destined to find them and they all already had their connection with the different direwolves, or did that happen after finding them? But there's definitely a real connection between them.
How about you, IG? Do you believe cats walk 500 miles over alligator pits and uneven terrain to find their owners?
No. Especially if they move. Like, if something happens and the animal ends up away from the house where they've lived for a long time, if they've spent some time outside, maybe. But, like, I've got some cats here that never go outside. We could take them 3 blocks from here. They'd probably never find home. They're
That's
stupid.
how my cat is.
Cats, no, definitely. Dogs might have a chance, but even then, you take them, like, 8 blocks away, and they'd be like, I'm lost. So, hundreds of miles, And especially to a new place, fuck no. That doesn't happen. But connection there, this is kind of a fantasy thing. There might be a little something deeper.
Jules, Littlefinger tells Kat that the dagger was his, but he lost it to Tyrion Lannister. Did Lord Baelish break your bullshit detector, or was he believable in that instance?
I don't know. I think I pretty much believed him because I wasn't believing the Lannisters at this point. Although I did like Tyrion right from jump, I wasn't sure that the Lannisters were all on the up and up. So I definitely felt like he had an affinity for Kat, so he would want to help her in any way and guide her in the right direction. So I guess I didn't think he would have reason to lie to her, where the Lannisters, I think, are already untrustworthy. So I believed him.
Yeah, well, as Littlefinger goes, how much can you believe a dude running a whorehouse? I'm just saying.
Yeah. But he does love Kat. Like, he really seemed to have a thing for her, so.
And he's still running a whorehouse.
Jeez, you're being a little harsh on the whorehouse purveyors. IG Kat takes Tyrion prisoner. In the end, Kat delivers the famous "Your family has such fine friends" speech. Game of Thrones has such a great flair for the dramatic ending. Where did the end of this episode rate for you?
It was pretty fucking good. Holy shit, and that's the thing. This show does a lot of really good ends to the episodes, where it's cliffhanger, but it's not. It's more just suspense. Like, oh shit, it's about to go down. And the great thing about Game of Thrones is, oh shit, it's about to go down, doesn't ever come back and go, nah, it's not really. When it's about to go down, shit is going down.
Ryan, Loras encourages Renly to be more of a power bottom king, with the Tyrells backing. If you had your choice between Renly, Joffrey, Stannis, or Robb, who do you think would be best suited to rule the realm?
Probably Stannis. I like Stannis, but I was going to say, he usually does the right things, but I don't know that burning people at stake is the right thing.
Spoiler
but
alert.
I think...
Again, we're on season
Spoiler
1 here,
alert.
man. It's season 1.
All right, so at that stage, I think if Ned trusts Stannis, then I would trust that Stannis is going to do the right thing. So I think that Renly wants it because he just wants to be king. I think Robb is young, so who knows, what could happen. Robb is a little too young at that stage. Joffrey's we knew he was terrible by episode 2, so I would go with Stannis.
Well, let's see. So your options are Joffrey, Stannis, Renly, and Robb, right? Joffrey's a bitch. We've already talked about that. Robb is young and doesn't know anything, and he's right along with his stepbrother, bastard brother, where he doesn't know nothing. So he's out. I'd have a hard time believing power bottom Renly could do anything but be a power bottom. Which leaves us with Stannis. And the only downside to Stannis is that red bitch he's got hanging out with him.
Once again, we're on
Yeah,
season
that's what
1.
I'm saying. Like, we haven't even been introduced to
Oh,
Stannis
was she not there in
yet.
season 1? I didn't finish watching.
They didn't even show Stannis, but he was mentioned. Ned sent word to him. For as many people as I've turned on to the show, and as much garbage as I've gotten over that Renly and Loras Tyrell scene where they're shaving each other, I probably would have went with Renly myself. He just seemed less experienced but more even-mannered. Like, he didn't seem excitable like Robert, and he seemed more trustworthy than Joffrey. If I had my pick, Robb has never led anything, where Renly was already on the small council, already had a feel for King's Landing. He just seemed like he would be a better ruler.
Charlie Manson might be more even-keeled than Joffrey at this point. So.
True.
Jules, Robert and Cersei sit down and have a coming-to-Jesus meeting about their marriage and the relationship. Robert admits that he never felt anything for Cersei. Did your heart break a little bit in that instance for the Ice Queen?
It did, actually, because I don't know a ton about Cersei yet, so I know she's obviously manipulative and is willing to kill little boys, but I don't really know a lot about, her backstory. And you could see she was trying to relate to him in that moment, to be like, I've always loved you, but you were always calling out for somebody else that wasn't even there. I just wanted that connection with you. I wanted to have something with you, and then for him to just shut her down. I think you could have empathy for anybody in that situation.
Yeah, that was a really unexpectedly kind of warm scene between them, where they were both kind of honest and let it all out. And you do feel a little bit of sympathy for her because of, that she actually, I guess she actually had feelings at some point. She was actually human. And to that point, she really didn't come across as that. She just it seemed always cold and kind of calculating and just a nasty person. But that there was actually a time where she was just a normal, person, hopeful, and excited about the future. So it was one of the first time really where I felt sympathy for her as a character, and it was again, and that was just one of the best. That scene was one of the best acted scenes of the entire season. Just be all outside of everything else, it's one. If I were to pick my, the 5 best scenes of the season or of the show, really, that's one of the best scenes.
I would have to agree with you there, and I also think it was the first nail in King Robert's coffin. You could just sense the tone of the conversation where she's like, well, is there any part of this left? And he's kind of like, no, there really isn't. The nice thing about Queen Cersei, though, is that family always comes first. Pun intended. IG, Ned and Jaime fight in the street. Ned is stabbed by a Lannister soldier. If that fight would have played out to fruition, how do you think that would have came out?
I think at this point, Jaime takes down Ned. I think Jaime is conniving and doesn't fight as honorably as Ned does. Ned holds himself to a code, no matter what the cost. And that being the case, Jaime will do whatever it takes.
Well, see, I disagree with you because obviously, he was upset and didn't finish off Ned because he thought it was not clean what that other guy did. So I do think he does have some honor there as far as fighting. I think that's what he excels at and what he is known for. So I do think that he might have won definitely because he's younger, possibly quicker, seen more action than Ned has recently.
Well, I think that the clean part is about him, we're standing out in the square here where there are people, and then word will go that he was already injured and my other dudes were helping me fight, and then I cut his head off. That would have been unclean, not that he didn't win purely by himself. I think it's more that, you can't do this and then get away with it. Like if it was just him and Ned fighting and he killed Ned because Ned was attacking him, he'd be justified. But if he's got all the rest of his Kingsguard there, yeah, now it's not justified.
Well, I think it was the court of public opinion. He didn't want another title onto it, He didn't want to be the king / the Handslayer. It's a slippery slope. Next thing you know, you're murdering the master of coin. And where do you stop? You get these nicknames. It's like Daenerys. It takes 20 minutes to introduce her because she has so many nicknames by the end of the series. Ryan, what did you think of the fight, and who do you think would have came out on top?
I want to think Ned would have come out on top. And there's something to be said for, the grizzled veteran who's, been through it. But I think that Jaime would have won in the end if it come down to it. I think Jaime would have pulled out some tricks that he would have taken to the end. He's younger, faster, a knight. It's his job, and he's probably been training more. And so I just think at the end of the day, Jaime would have won.
Hey Ryan, Viserys receives his golden crown. So your opinion on Khal Drogo, the world's most literal horse lord, or a sister stealing bully? And did Viserys have it coming?
Viserys definitely had it coming. He was worse than Joffrey. That was one of my favorite moments of the show. It was just seeing him get his comeuppance. I don't know what to think about Khal Drogo. I think I see him as obviously he's a strong warrior, but I just think that the Dothraki and the way that their kind of own society is set up, isn't conducive to taking over the realm. So I think that he was an important pit stop for Daenerys, not to justify or rationalize rape, but I think their relationship eventually was able to help her become a stronger person and a stronger leader. So I think she needed him, or she was able to take advantage of him to gain confidence and become a leader. But I don't know that he wasn't, and he wasn't necessary for the kind of end goal, but it was an important kind of pit stop.
Well, I like him a lot. I like what he did to Viserys. because Viserys might be the only person alive in this universe who's a bigger bitch than Joffrey. Because if he didn't get his way, I mean, he was almost literally rolling on the ground, stomping his hands and feet on the ground, going, "Why can't I have this?" He's so
the
bad.
worst.
He's so bad. And I think blonde male children in this series, I think that's the connector. Because Joffrey's blonde, Viserys is blonde. It's the fucking blondes. So maybe blondes have more fun, but the men are more stupid. Because holy shit.
And Viserys and Joffrey both have the whininess market cornered. They're both whiny when they're not getting their way, and it's
I don't know. I'd like to see them in the octagon and see who would win in a straight up slap fight between the two of them.
I mean, which one of them can throw their head back further to get it out of the way? Stop! Quit it! Stop!
Yeah.
Jules, Ned reveals to Cersei that he knows about Joffrey. If you were Ned, would you have taken a less Maury show approach to the whole situation? Was it his honor in yelling, "Robert, you are not the father," from the stage is undoing?
Without a doubt, that was something he should have kept under his hat for sure. Because, especially since what happens to Robert, she wouldn't have been gunning for him so hard. But now that she knows that he knows everything, I mean, he really showed his whole hand right there to her. That was Ned's complete undoing, in my opinion.
And even if you know all this stuff, are you able to affect any change with it? Is it going to make any fucking difference at all? Because you can even prove it. Like, what's going to happen now? Are you just going to throw the whole kingdom into turmoil because that kid don't belong there? So who goes in there now and call in Renly and power bottom on? I mean, we know that it normally works, descendants of that person. And if it's believed by the majority of the people that the descendant of Robert is Joffrey, isn't Joffrey going to get in there anyway, regardless of the incest and the children and all this other shit? So really, you're doing this, it's like, get on a treadmill. Get off the treadmill, Ned. Just let it go. And maybe try and, if something happens to Robert, maybe try and be a good hand to Joffrey instead of being kind of just upset that the shit is happening, and see what else you can do. Because he just shot himself in the foot doing all that, really.
Yeah, it was a bad move, and it just wasn't smart. But I guess it kind of goes to show why the Starks suffered their demise, more specifically Ned, but just as a whole, they don't know how to play the game, and they weren't, and he suffered.
I don't think they knew it was a game. These other people are all playing a game, and Ned is like, that's the point where honor can only take you so far. At some point, you got to get smart.
Sending somebody from Albany down to the city for crumbs and find out that there's a whole world of shit going on in New York City that you don't want to deal with. That guy asking you for $1 doesn't want $1, but he wants your whole wallet. It's a problem. Ned was definitely in the right spot. The North was his element, and having his druthers, he should have stayed there. And that kind of leads to my next question. Robert's hunt goes wrong. He's gored. The boar eventually kills him, but he leaves Ned in charge. IG, if you were Ned, would you have politely took the decree, stuck it in your jacket, packed your shit, and headed north?
I'd have been north quick. I'd have been on my way. That'd have been like, I don't need to show anybody this. You guys can just do whatever the fuck it is you do down here. I'm going back up where I have my legions of different families that are like, we love Ned Stark, but y'all can just live here where it's warm. I'm going to go back up to the cold. I know how to make fire. I can keep myself alive. I'm good.
I totally agree. Like, I'd never even understood why Ned wanted to stay there. And, that was his pass, basically, to go back to his life. He could go back now, and he didn't have to deal with any of this anymore. I don't understand why
What kept him there again is his stupid fucking honor.
Yeah.
There is a point where you are too honorable, where you're no longer making smart decisions for yourself and your family. Because now they don't want to just kill Ned, they want them all dead.
The scale of honorable goes from returning the lawnmower that you borrowed from your neighbor to Ned Stark, and you want to land someplace in the middle, I guess?
Yeah.
Although, was he trying to protect Kat at this point? Because they all thought she still had Tyrion. So did he need to kind of stay there to protect what she had done to make sure she wouldn't have been.
But he could have just gone to her on his way back north because they were in between.
Yeah, but wouldn't she have still had to suffer some sort of consequences for kidnapping Tyrion or taking him?
Yeah, well, get back into Winterfell and come and try and take something from us, bitches. You can't live up here in the cold with us.
Yeah, I don't know if providing 3 more hostages is really helping Cat in any positive type of way. Ryan, the Queen rips up Ned's decree and demands he bends a knee. He refuses, and the City Watch turns on him. What was more responsible for Ned's demise, his honor or the lack of photocopiers?
Definitely his honor. There were ways to go about, stopping the Lannisters, and Ned just obviously did not seem to do it. He just put his head down and ran straight ahead and was taken down rather quickly. So yeah, definitely his own honor was responsible.
Yeah, maybe he should have taken some time and called some bannermen in or something. Don't rely on the Kingsguard like they're gonna do the right thing. Get some people that are gonna do the right thing, that you've already tried and tested. These are all new people to you. Call your people. It's like, I'm not gonna call like Bucky from down the street because he's supposed to do something. I'm calling Cynic. We're gonna roll in strong. I'm not taking somebody I don't know. I'm taking somebody I do.
I thought that was like a real drop the mic moment for Cersei, though, because it was just like, yeah, cool, you got this piece of paper. This is what I think of that. And it was like, he really did think it was his shield. He really was.
Might have been better if she threw it on the ground and peed on it instead.
Yeah.
That might have been more fun.
And nobody balked at it, though.
That would have been
there was a throne room full of people, and nobody balked at that. Like, oh, this is a royal decree. Okay.
Who heard? Even Sir Barristan being like, those are the king's words. It's like, yep, what's your point?
King's dead, new king. Moving on. Ryan, how do you think that would have played out, though? If say the City Watch stays loyal. I mean, they had some firepower in that throne room on the Lannister side.
Yeah, I think it plays out. I mean, it does play out a lot differently at that stage. But I don't know that Ned could have. It would have created too much unrest, so I didn't see that as a real option. Like I kind of knew that they were gonna turn on him at that point. I think Ned could have survived and lived to be the hand for another day, and maybe it could have gone long enough to get Stannis in. But yeah, I didn't see the City Watch. I saw the City Watch turning on him.
Yeah, Baelish played him like a fiddle there. I mean, he kind of sneaks up behind him and grabs him and told him, I told you not to trust me, which one of the best moments in the series so far. The Lannisters kill all the Starks in the capital, and presumably Arya's water dancer. Should the show said no to the god of death today and done more with the Braavosi?
I don't know. I don't know how much further he could have gone because there was only one of him. I mean, we still ultimately don't know his fate. We can guess it, but I think that, I think it showed that he was a badass. He basically took down that whole room with a wooden stick until it came down to Sir Meryn Trant, but I don't think there was much more they could have done with him.
I don't know. I would have paid to see a buddy cop comedy with Arya and the water dancer. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, he was a great character, and I hope he shows up again in some way. He was just fun. And again, another important, it's interesting how Arya had all these mentors on the way, but again, another incredibly important mentor for her. And there is this hope that maybe he survived.
That's why Meryn ended up on the list.
If he would have saw her slaps Sansa, I think she would have removed him from the list. It would have been like, all right, this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Arya would have just scratched his name out. IG, Robb calls his banners and rides south. Did you give Robb a shot in hell riding against the Blonde Ambition Tour, which is the Lannister army?
I kind of did, because they seemed like they were ready to go. And I'm not sure the Lannisters, because really the Lannisters had not too previously really come out of this war, and the Lannisters are money people. They're not. While they will fight, they're not fighters. They're money people. They're like, we'll buy our shit. We don't need to fight for it. We'll just go buy it. They're the rich Saudi princes of this world. We don't need to fight. We'll buy it. We have all the money. That being said, I think they had a good shot, And the dire wolf doesn't hurt.
I totally agree with you because even if you look at Ned versus Tywin, Ned looked like he's been around, he's rough, he's tough, and Tywin's very uppity, put together, rich looking. And I think the North has a lot of the rough and tumble players behind them. And you look at Umber, when I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself, but, he had that situation with the dire wolf when he was talking to Robb, and he completely stands up and shakes it right off. No big deal when he got his fingers bitten right off, as if, he just got a scratch. Those guys mean business. They know how to fight. They're unaffected by this. So I think Robb definitely had the better team, the team I would want to go into war with.
Now, if we viewed the Game of Thrones as a historical document, is that where the term finger sandwiches comes from?
I don't know.
Khal Drogo gets stabbed defending Dany's honor, but based off the amount of damage the Black Knight and Monty Python's Holy Grail took, didn't the stab wound seem kind of insignificant?
It did seem pretty insignificant. And I guess it's just kind of convenience. You have often where someone will take a really bad stab and they'll survive that, but then something like this, this is more realistic. It gets infected and he dies from a nothing wound. But I don't like that it doesn't happen more often. Like it's kind of like, wait, so it happens this one time when it is something that would happen all the time, but then people will survive things that are far worse.
Yeah, I saw something like right after this season years ago. It was a meme. It was hilarious because I had a picture of Khal Drogo. And this is, Command's army of fierce warriors dies of infected boo-boo.
Yeah.
Robb, in a brilliant mood of feeding the Lannister spy misinformation, it absolutely worked, and Jaime Lannister is captured by the young wolf. Catelyn and Jaime then later have a conversation that night when she finds out that Ned was beheaded. Would you be able to speak with Jaime and not kill him yourself?
No, not if I know his family were the reasons that my husband was just beheaded. I mean, the emotions you would be overcome with. I know that she knows there's more on the line. Maybe she's just more level-headed and has the ability to have some forethought to, what her repercussions would be in that scenario. But I think it would be extremely hard to have not beat the living hell out of him until he was dead.
Ryan, what did you think was going on there with Jaime? Because he was talking a lot of smack in that scene. Do you think that he wanted to be killed, or do you think that he was just going to go out being a Lannister?
It's so hard to tell because he has shows so many character traits throughout the season, throughout the show. I think he had a death wish. I think at that stage, I think he wanted to be killed. I think he seemed resigned to the fact that he died. Why would they let him go? And the Starks are they're honor bound to a fault. So I don't think he expected that Robb would trade him, and Robb wouldn't trade him. So I think at that stage it's like, well, better, just end it now rather than suffer or deal with, whatever, because he knew that there was a group of people who all wanted him dead or worse. So yeah, I think at that stage it was kind of a death wish.
Well, and does he know the travails of war, like how long he's going to be stuck as this prisoner and with his ultimate demise? So yeah, I agree. I think he might just be like, end it quickly because I don't want to be drugged along for who knows how long.
Yeah, it had to wound his pride pretty heavily. IG, Ned admits treason, and rather than be given the black as promised, he's ironically beheaded with his own sword. Were you absolutely shocked at this turn of events, or was this just a case of Sean Beanery?
Well, that's a good question because, you see Sean Bean right at the beginning of the series and you're like, well, is this a mini-series like I said last week, or what's going on? And then you start to really get comfortable and you're like, they can't kill him. He is the guy. Because every series typically has a guy. That's the main one. That's the dude we follow. And so far, that's been him. That's the main guy. Everybody else is like secondary players to Ned Stark. And then they cut his head off. I did find it ironic that it wasn't Joffrey who swung the sword. It was the tongueless, goofy bastard over here who did it, and he's the guy that does the work for the king, I guess, but kind of shows the difference in honor because we saw Ned do it at the beginning and now some random do it in front of a crowd of people. You know, I mean, this must be like the Old West where, hey, we're having a hanging today. Come on down, bring the kids, have some popcorn.
Yeah.
You know,
'Cause there's cheering.
They're all right there, and we're going to watch somebody with their head come off. That's fun. Hey, I'm going to get in the splash zone where the blood sprays on me.
It's like a Gallagher concert. I want front row.
That's gross.
Bring your poncho. Come early, come often. Ryan, Rob is anointed the King of the North. Does this scene still not tickle your inner fanboy? I mean, I mark out a bit every single time I watch it. And did you believe in the young wolf going forward?
I did believe in him to an extent. Look at that stage. Like, it's the most shocking moment of any show. You know, I didn't. You know, yeah, Ned's the guy. He's the main character. He's gonna live. You know, he's gonna figure it out, and maybe this will go on for a while, and there'll be battles back and forth. But I did not expect him to die. So, kind of basic storytelling at this stage has been kind of destroyed for me. So I'm like, well, who's next? It's got to be Rob. So at this stage, I'm 100% behind Rob. It's like, well, he's young. He's the one. I guess he's the guy. We were thrown for a loop here, but it's going to be Rob. So I think the scene itself was really moving. And at that stage, it's like, all right, well, we're back in Rob now, and didn't expected that he would then kind of take Ned's place as the guy for the series who would eventually win.
How about you, IG? Were you standing in your living room with your replica long claw, waving it around, yelling "King of the North"?
Oh, and I had my teeny tiny little miniature stuffed fucking Greywind, and I was ready. I was like, let's do this, bitches! Yeah!
Jules, Tyrion's maid, Hand of the King, in Tywin's stead. Based off of how things went for the last two Hands of the King, do you think Tyrion was playing with Dragon's fire by accepting the position?
Well, yes and no. I think that Tyrion's probably infinitely more intelligent than the last two on how to play the game. And I think that he's getting his ability to show what he knows how to do besides fuck prostitutes and drink. And this is when his intelligence is going to come out. So I think he was probably happy to have this role, have his dad recognize him at this point. And I think this is the best move for him, because I think he is well aware of how this game is played, and he knows his sister. He knows her moves. This is a chess tournament now, and he knows her moves. He knows what his moves will be and how he will have to deal with her and Joffrey and all of it.
IG, the stallion that will mount the world, now with 100% less mounting. Dany loses her husband, her baby, and her army all in one night. In a sea of tragedy, is Dany the Titanic?
Ooh, Dany is sinking hard. It really looks bleak at this moment for Dany. It really does. And to lose the army, to lose the baby, 100% less mounting, wow. Who saw all that coming? You know, only death can pay for life. And that witch that she tried to get her to do some stuff, that was, in hindsight, probably not the greatest idea. You know, maybe she should have just let Khal go, kept the baby. This is the new Khal. All of you, I will tell you what he's saying, even though he doesn't speak well. He talks to me through my heart, so follow my directions. I don't know. She had to pick a different solution, but from rape to love, I guess a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome, and she wanted him back, and she didn't get it.
The Night's Watch rides en masse north of the Wall. Did Mormont give up a tactical advantage by marching everyone out into the wild?
Yeah, he did. You know, at that stage, I didn't know how many people he had. But in hindsight, yeah, it was definitely a tactical advantage. I think they've proven, at least they're adept at moving in small groups, and there should have been a strong group of Rangers to go out and figure out, kind of solve everything, or not solve everything, but figure out what's going on. But to send everybody out was probably a bad idea.
Jules, the first time you watched the series, or the first time you watched the episode, I mean, a family that burns together stays together, right? As Daenerys climbs onto the funeral pyre with Khal Drogo, did you freak out the first time?
I mean, this was an amazing moment in this first season on this series. This was just something where you're going, how is this going to end? Now, we do know earlier in the season, she touched those dragon eggs and did not burn. And I think that at that moment, I just was so overcome with my eyes glued to the screen. I just didn't even know what was going to happen next. Was she going to burn on this pyre with Khal Drogo? I didn't know. I did not know, but I was not expecting her to rise out of the ashes and have these amazing dragons sitting on her.
Ryan, she comes out unburnt with hatched and carefully placed dragons all over the place. What were your thoughts on the season and your rating?
The season, I would say, is a 10. I'd never had a TV viewing experience like that until that point. I'm going to change it. I'm going to say 9.5, only because there are a couple seasons that are better to me, and it would be unfair to rate them. So I'm going to say 9.5, but at that point, I never had a TV viewing experience that was like that. I think it subverted expectations. It was engaging throughout. Every episode was great. The performances were amazing. The story was amazing. There's so much to go back to. Every time I rewatch the season or an episode, there are things that I missed. It was a world that I became obsessed with, like many other people. So yeah, I would definitely, my rating a 9.5, one of easily the best TV viewing experiences I've ever had.
I'm going to go ahead and say 10 for me. I agree with Ryan. This is one of the best TV experiences I've ever had, because right from the very beginning, when the Rangers are finding all those body parts lined up in a weird design, and you're having a young boy being thrown out the window, and then you're having the main character get beheaded, and then you end the season with this woman rising from the ashes with dragons on her. This does not get any better than this. This was a spectacular series, and I knew right from there it was going to be like no other. So for sure, this was a 10, season 1.
The whole season for me was a 9.5. I can't recall a freshman series coming out swinging like Game of Thrones did. It was a complete effort, and it left me wanting more. In a mere 10 hours, they built a whole world that felt like it had been in existence for over 1,000 years, with heroes and villains and dragons. As a viewer, you're free to most certainly love your favorite character, but don't ever grow attached to them. There are no "if Ned Stark dies, we riot" t-shirts in Westeros. Speaking of poor Ned, ice dropped down and ended Lord Stark's arc. To me, Game of Thrones just killed the Tony Soprano of the show, and it was mind-blowing. By episode 10, you got the feeling that George R.R. Martin wanted you to know that this was a fantasy world, but it most certainly wasn't made by Disney. And to steal a quote later in the series, if you think this is going to have an happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
So, for me, again, I'm going to give this one a 10 as well. This show changed television, quite simply. This show showed us that you don't have to follow the script. You don't have to follow the formulas that have worked in the past. You can do new things. You can kill main characters. You can have people playing both sides and be right on both sides, because there are people that are all over, and that's what makes this the Game of Thrones. It is absolutely amazing. And sometimes being dead doesn't really mean that you're dead, because that Daenerys looked like she was going to be dead, and all of a sudden there she is with dragons, buck naked dragons. I wish I was cool enough to wear dragons as clothes.
Oh, you most definitely are.
So there you go, Cynic Radio Podcast. We're going to call it a 10, even though Ryan threw a 9.5. 9.5 is close enough. We're going to round everybody up. This is a 10, the first season of Game of Thrones. We're going to be talking about more seasons and a few select episodes in the upcoming weeks. Right now, here comes Really. So now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's time for Really. I'd explain it. Just listen. You'll get it.
My Really this week goes out to Giants ace pitcher Madison Bumgarner, who recently took a spill on his dirt bike and landed on his pitcher's shoulder and will be sidelined till after the All-Star break with a grade 2 sprain of his AC joint. Mad Bum is an intense competitor, and this is his first stint on the disabled list in his 10-year career. It's such a huge blow to his team, though. Not only is Madison one of the most dominant pitchers in the majors, but he's also the best hitting pitcher since Babe Ruth. And I understand these guys need a life off the field, but a dirt bike, I'm just baffled. I love watching him play, and I hope for a speedy recovery. But no Mad Bum for 3 months because of a dirt bike? Really?
I mean, my really this week, unsurprisingly, is Nordstrom for their $425 faux muddy jeans that some dumbass somewhere thought would be an amazing idea to fake the look of actual work. What's worse than the initial idea is that others sat around actually co-signing this mess. What in the actual fuck is all this about? First off, most people don't try to go out of their way to look like a pig that just rolled around in slop, let alone pay $425 to look that way. I'm pretty sure you could spend $10 on a pair of Goodwill jeans and go accomplish that yourself. I think Nordstrom should release any name and number of people who bought these jeans so I can go to their houses and bitch slap them, because this is the most pathetic use of $425 imaginable. So to Nordstrom and whatever dumbass may have actually purchased this atrocity, really?
Really for me this week goes out to the NFL and the NFL draft. I could go the direction of saying you're taking these young men's lives and having them be picked by an orangutan in the zoo. Not going to do that. I could say that you're dumping all your fans in Oakland by having Oakland draft in Las Vegas. I'm not going to do that either. What I'm going to do is 2 teams in the NFL drafted 2 young men who have literally beat the shit out of women. One of them has video that you can find on YouTube right now. Joe Mixon literally laid out a woman with a right cross. Oh my God, he hit her so hard she was out before she hit the floor. The other one, Caleb Brantley, just beat up a woman a few weeks ago and has charges on him right now. And the team that drafted him isn't even sure if they're going to keep him. So, in today's world, have we not learned from the Love Boat incident from the Minnesota Vikings, from Ray Lewis's charges, from everything that's gone on that gives the NFL a black eye? Stop drafting young men with bad histories, because it's going to repeat itself. Let's make better decisions, guys. Let's put role models out for our kids that aren't awful people. It's time. It's time to start caring about someone's character when you put them in the public spotlight. They're a reflection of your team, they're a reflection of your city, and they're a reflection of who we are in this country. Let's do this right. NFL. Really?
So my really for the week is San Antonio Mayor Ivy Taylor, who in response to questions about generational poverty said, "To me, it's broken people not being in a relationship with their creator and therefore not being in a good relationship with their families and their communities and not being productive members of society." So, I mean, I think that's the ultimate answer. So this video has made it all over online. There are articles, everywhere from Time Magazine to the Huffington Post. And really, this is just another situation with a politician who's missed the idea of separation of church and state. Like, public policy has nothing to do with religion. And if your only answer to fixing problems that are maligning our society is to have more faith, then maybe you should find another line of work. So to Ivy Taylor, or to Mayor Ivy Taylor, really?
And that's going to do it for episode 29 of the Cynic Radio Podcast. I'm Igrahi, and with me this week, as always, you'll see him in the new live-action Disney version of The Ugly Duckling as the newest princess, Cynic. Joining us this week has also been Jules and Ryan George of the Jim Wits Podcast. You can find him over at thejimwits.com. Send us your comments, questions, concerns, and we'd like them all sent by Ravens this week, but you can send them to cynicradio@gmail.com. You can find us on the internet at cynicradio.com. Look for us on Facebook at facebook.com/cynicradio, and find us on Twitter at cynicradio. We've seen all you guys. We see all the new likes and follows we're getting on Twitter and Facebook. We love every one of you. Thanks for listening to our show. Come back next week. We're going to have more Game of Thrones and some other stuff you're not going to want to miss. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cynicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.
now with 100% less mounting.